Okay. Let's go. Okay, right. Let's get started. Very nice with this Shmaki Gemara. There's plenty to discuss. A really interesting, I hope you'll find it interesting, very, very interesting subtopic that we have here. Okay. Says the Gemara. The Gemara starts off discussing the 10 stages of Golus of the Sanhedrin. And the Gemara does an interesting thing. At the end of the previous Amud, the Gemara compares the 10 stages of Golus of the Shechina. Well, it's the same way. And there's a reason for this. You've got the sheets? Yeah. In the same way that the Shechina moved from the Oroim to the Kruvim and moved outwards, similarly, Sanhedrin was going there 10 times. And it's not just 10. The Shechina moved 10 times, the Sanhedrin moved 10 times. There's a deeper meaning, and let's see if we can find a connection. The Gemara says that you don't have this. This is at the last line of the previous Amud. Ukenegdon Golsa Sanhedrin Migmor Menishkas Hagozis Lechanus Mechanus Yerushalayim liyavne miyavne leusha meusha liyavne miyavne leusha meusha. They move backwards and forwards. You notice from Yavne to Usha, backwards and forwards. Meusha leShafrom, meShafrom leBeis Sharim, leBeis Sharim leTzipoiri, uMitzipoiri leTeveriya. The last move. And tonight we're going to talk about Teveriya. I found myself as I was preparing this, stumbling across some really, really interesting ideas about Teveriya. We'll see. So, the final stage of the Golus of the Sanhedrin, when they exiled, they went to Teveriya. That was it. Teveriya amuka mikulam. Says the Gemara, Teveriya is deeper than all of them. What does that mean, deeper? Says Rashi, Shpelim hoyu oz mikol hamasois shegom. The status. In other words, this is not a topography. This is not telling you that this is the lowest point. The Yamamelach, and it's not far off, but it doesn't mean geographically it's the lowest place. It means that this stage of Golus, the spiritual fragmentation and dispersal, the concept of Golus was at its strongest in a place called Teveriya. And we'll see why that is significant. Teveriya is the deepest manifestation of the Golus of Torah. Shenemar, Shreila, Mikol Shenemar, V'shiflas me'eretz Tedaveri. Rabbi Elazar says no, Sheish Goliath, Shenemar ki has. It was the pasuk again. It was a funny pasuk. Hold on. Get this straight. Ki heishach. Your pasuk in Yeshaya. Ki heishach yeshvei moriim pirium is gogo yashpileno yashpilo ad oretz yagieno ad ofar. The madrega that the Sanhedrin would find itself in, that means Torah, the Golus of Torah, which is Malka v'Sareha Bagoyim Ein Torah, that will find it'll get to the worst point, if you like. The worst point is in Teveriya. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Umishom Asidin Ligoel. Just going to change, I don't know why the camera does that. There we go. Says, sorry, I don't know what's going on here. There we go. Okay, says the Gemara, Umishom Asidin Ligoel. And from there, the Geula, Asidin Ligoel, the Geula will come from Teveriya. You heard it here first. Mishom asidim ligol. Shenema hisnari me ofor kumi shvi Yerushalayim. We're going to sing it tomorrow night. If Teveriya represents the lowest stage of Golus, then it makes sense to say, sorry, can you, I don't know who's on there, can you? I'll just mute everybody, sorry. Okay. Right, sorry, let's just get this sorted, then we can get back to it. Fine. So then it makes sense to say that the Golus will start from them. You've got to get to a stage of total destruction before you can get yourself up again. So it'll come from Teveriya, says Rashi. Nothing really. Okay, we're going to come back to that. Let's finish off the Amud, and then this is actually probably the main topic we're going to discuss tonight. We've discovered some really, I hope you'll agree with me, really interesting things. And we'll see if we manage, hopefully, perhaps, to even connect it to Hanukkah. I think I found the Hanukkah connection. We'll see. Omer Rabbi Shua ben Korcha, Mishnah, new Mishnah. Until now, we've discussed some of the takonos of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We're now going to do the rest of his takonos. Omer Rabbi Shua ben Korcha, v'oyzei says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Furthermore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was Mesechta. She'afilu rosh beistin b'chol mokoim. She'afilu rosh beistin b'chol mokoim. That even if the rosh beistin, until now we know that the process, the procedure for declaring Rosh Chodesh is that the rosh beistin has to say Mekudesh Mekudesh. Now, what would be if the rosh beistin, for some reason, finds himself in another city and he is geographically distant from his beistin? So surely you would think it would be legitimate to think that you need him. His presence is needed in order to say Mekudesh. What happens if he's not there? The beistin is in one place, he's in another place. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, "Afilu rosh beistin b'chol mokoim." Even if the rosh beistin is somewhere else, nevertheless, it is still, one is still able to make it, to declare Rosh Chodesh, even without the Nasi, the rosh beistin being present. Why? Sorry, not why. But where do the Eidim go to? They go to the Mokim Havad. Says Rashi, Shel Yeshiva Yelchu. The Sanhedrin Yakdushuhu V'lei Rosh Beistin. The Sanhedrin, interesting Rashi uses the word Sanhedrin. Okay, the Beistin will be Mekadesh. This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's takana, that we will be Mekadesh, the Chodesh, without the Rosh Beistin. We'll manage without him. So the Eidim need to know, where do you go? Do you find out where the Rosh Beistin is? No, you go where the Beistin is. Zon Bigumar. Hahi Itza, the Azmanua Ledina Kamida Ameima Ber Nahardoi. There was a woman who, it seems, was a debtor, showed money, and Ameima summoned her to Bezdin. He issued what's called the Hazmona Ledin. He issued her an invitation, right? You know, there are some invitations you'd rather not get, but this is one of those. So he issued her a Hazmona, a summons. In English we say a summons. A summons to Bezdin. And then Ameima went to Mechuzah, went somewhere else. V'lo was a Basrei. So he summoned her. He was in Nahardoi, and he went then somewhere else, and she didn't follow him. She didn't go where he was. Kosav Pesicha Ilavo. So what did he do? He excommunicated her, says Rashi, because she didn't show up in Beistin, even though he had gone somewhere else. She still should have followed him. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. We learned and we learned in our Mishnah here. Surely she did nothing wrong by going to the place of the Beistin. She doesn't have to follow the Av Beistin if he goes on holiday or wherever it is he's going. I'm sure he was going on holiday, but she doesn't have to follow him. We see in our Mishnah. So on what grounds was Ameima able to put her in Chayrim, to excommunicate her? Omalei, and here, this is a bit of a difficult answer in the Gemara. Let's see if you pick up the difficulty here. Omalei, he said, that was a specific decree that is limited. It's exclusive for Eidos HaChodesh. Only for Eidos HaChodesh. Why? The point is because we're worried that if we start schlepping the Eidim here and there and they've got to find out where the Beistin is, they'll say, oh, forget it, I'm not going to bother coming. But if they know, you go to the Beis Din. The Beis Din that's exactly, you know where the Beis Din is, the address, that you know exactly where to go. That's why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was masakin it. Now, the Gemara could have finished there and just said, but this concern does not exist in any other case. So you've got Eidus HaChodesh, where there's a reason for this decree, versus any other case. But the Gemara doesn't do that. The Gemara says, it starts off saying that. And you expect the Gemara to finish off and say, that's only with Eidus HaChodesh, nothing else, but it doesn't do that. It says it's only Eidus HaChodesh, and then it says something special about when you owe money, which is, when the Mepharshim ask, it's difficult. Why did you even need to say that? But anyway, let's see what it says. Aval Hacha, he quotes a pasuk. The pasuk says in Mishlei, Eved loive leish malve. When you borrow money, you are now, in English we say you are beholden. I don't know how you say this in German, but you know what I mean? You are an Eved to the guy that lent you money. He's in control, not you. So you got to run around. So you got to go to this, the Beis Din over here, go to the diners there, you go there. You borrow the money. You've got the problem. Eved loive leish malve. Finished. It's your problem. Fine. Tanu Rabbon. Ein koyanim. Now we're going to go through the more takonos that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was masakin, and then we're going to go back to Teveriya. Okay. Tanu Rabbon. Ein koyanim rashoy lalis v'sandaleim leduchen. Koyanim are not allowed to wear their sandals, their shoes, when they go in duchen. V'zu echad b'teisha takonos shehiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This is one of the 9 takonos that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was masakin. So how do we get all these takonos? Shis v'hai pirka, 6 that we've learned in this parak. Chadon the pirka kama. There was one in the previous parak. The idach, and now I'll tell you some more. Desanya, it says, actually I think this is Disnan, I think it's a Mishnah, if I'm not mistaken. In Krisos. Or does that come later? No, that's the next one, sorry. Desanya. Gerushan is Gayer Bismanazan. The truth is, really, I should give a shir on this topic because it's a fascinating Shaila and Machlokes Rishonim. Whether, well, let's see. The Brisa says, and we passed it, Gerushan is Gayer Bismanazan. Somebody converts to Bismanazan. Really, the halacha is, as soon as you convert, because there's, in the process of Gerus, we forget that actually there's another part, which is bringing a korban. And Gerus has to bring a korban. That's halacha. But we can't do it nowadays because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. So Gerus is Gaibis Manazeh, the halacha is tzorich, the halacha really is tzorich sheyafshrish roi valekino. Really, you have to take money, put aside. I don't know how much cane is a nest of birds. So it's, I don't know what it costs, 50 euro. So really the halacha is you need to take 50 euro, put it away in an envelope and say, this is the korban I will bring when Moshiach comes. Because that's the halacha, by the way. Sorry? That is a not a deposit. It's the money. You're makdish the money. A requisite. Yes, absolutely, it's a requisite. Wait, we're not even started. The question is, if it's a requisite, then how come we can even do gerus nowadays? It's a big machlokes. It's a fascinating topic. Anyway, so the halach is really you have to put away the money. Along came Omer ben Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came along. This is one of his takonos, and he said, no. Why? Because when you set aside that money, it becomes holy. It's kodesh. And therefore, if something goes wrong with it, there's me'ila. There's a concept of me'ila, which is a form of theft. And that's, imagine, Moshiach should come tomorrow. Well, it probably won't come on Friday, whatever. But Moshiach is going to come. So who knows when he's going to come? So you'll have, Baruch Hashem, thousands of Gerim over all the generations, with all this Kodesh money floating around, and then they die. And what about their kids? And it is so easy for things to go wrong. This money is holy. So he said, don't set the money aside. When Moshiach comes, we're going to come. But he was Mavak, this is one of his takonos. Okay? Another one of those takonos, is actually another one of them is actually a machlokes between Rav Papa and Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, whether they are, which one was the last one of his 9 takonos. Either it was Kerem Revai, Rav Papa says it was Kerem Revai. Nachman bar Yitzchak says it was a Loshen Shel Zahiris, the red thread in the Beis HaMikdash. What does this mean? Says the Gemara, Rav Papa Kerem Revai, This man, Rav Papa says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's takana was Kerem Revai because it says in the Mishnah, Kerem Revai hoyer Yerushalayim halachim l'chol tzad. If you, on the 4th year after having planted a vineyard, you have to take the fruits into Yerushalayim and eat them, right? So Kerem Revai now, but if you are within 1 day's walk of Yerushalayim, you'd have to actually physically take the fruits and go. Beyond that, you could redeem it. Now, what is considered a day's walk? Says the Mishnah. V'zuhi tchuma elas min adoroim. So you've got Eilat in the south, Akrabat in the north, Lod in the west, and Yarden in the east. Those are the parameters of what is considered a day's walk. But what is the reason? Why did Chazal say that you should, within a day's walk, you should bring in the fruits so that the markets in Yerushalayim should be full of payros? Okay, a minute. In Yerushalayim, you take the payros itself, even though Minat Torah, as Rashi says, you could redeem it. But the Chazal said you should bring it in so that Yerushalayim will be full of fruit. Be a beautiful thing. However, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came along and said, Batanya, and there's a brayso which says, now of course that only made sense in order to adorn Yerushalayim and make it beautiful by being full of fruit. That only made sense when we had Yerushalayim and we had the Beis Hamikdash, but after the Churban, there was no point. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was mavatal, as we shall see. Batanya, Kerem Revai Hoyle Rabbi Eliezer v'Mizrach Belod b'tzad Kfar Tavi. Rabbi Eliezer had some Kerem Revai in the east of Lod, next to Kfar Tavi. Ubikesh Rabbi Eliezer l'akir lanim. Rabbi Eliezer was going to just give it away to the poor people, and they should eat it because it was a bother for him to schlep it all the way to Yerushalayim. His Talmidim said to him, Rebbe, Kvar nimnu chavrecha olav v'hitiru. His Talmidim said to him, don't worry, your chaverim, meaning Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, which is actually a problem as we're going to see, because it wasn't his chaver, he was actually his rebbe. Your chaverim already said, v'hitiru, says Rashi, first wide line, Lifdoison lahalis adomim. Dikehilla dechorba Yerushalayim. Once Yerushalayim is unfortunately destroyed, Chazal were not concerned to make Yerushalayim, adorn it, make it beautiful with payros. So they said, don't worry, it's fine. You can redeem it. It's not a problem. Man chavrecha. So who is this? In the Talmidim said to Eliezer, your chaverim, your colleagues. Man chavrecha Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Fine. So this is one version of the final one of his takonos. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, I know he said that wasn't the final takon, it was something else altogether. It was about the story that what we used to do in the Beis Hamikdash. There was a Loshen Shel Zohiris, there was a piece of wool which was crimson red and it turned white miraculously, and it caused a problem, as we shall see. Desanya, Borishoino, Loshen Shel Zohiris al Pesach Ulam Mibachut. Initially, they tied this Loshen Shel Zohiris on the outside of the Ulam. Hilbin, if it went white, Toyu Smeich, and everybody was happy. It was a sign of forgiveness. If it didn't go white, they were sad. Hiskinus, therefore, they said that it's a bit demoralizing. So Hiskinus, so the takana was they should put it on the Pesach Ulam Mibifnim, put it just on the inside. So what did the Chevraman they would look around the corner to see if they could see it. But Adayin Hoyim made sitzin v'royim. And they could still have Chevranim, I don't know where they climbed to look inside, just on the inside, and they could see it. So we're back to square one. Hilbin, how you speak. If it went white, they were happy. Lo Hilbin, lo you had saving. If it didn't go white, they were unhappy. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was Mesechta. But what they should do instead was take it out to where they throw away the azazah. Yeah, the goat. And they would put half of it on the rock and half of it in between the karnayim, the horns of the goat that they was the goat lazar. Finished. Next. Now, so we have a machlokes from Nachman bar Yitzchak and Rav Papa. Which of the takonos was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's final takon? Was it about the Kerem Revai or was it about the thread? And now the Gemara is very briefly going to tell us why each one didn't agree with the other one and then that will be the end of the Gemara. Then we'll go back to talking about Teveriya. Okay, quickly. Says the Gemara. Rav Nachman is my time with Grandpapa. Why did Rav Nachman not say like Grandpapa? Grandpapa is the one who said, he said, Keren. It can't be Rebecca, that was Rebecca and Zakai's takana, it was him, because they would never say to Rebbe Eliezer, your chaver. He wasn't his chaver. Rebbe Eliezer was his Rebbe. He would never have said that. Rebbe Eliezer, we have a rabbi. Says the Gemara, yeah, but it wasn't nice to say to their Rebbe about his Rebbe. So as a way of cover, they just said, your chaver. That's the Gemara's answer. Fine. So he says, so why does Rav Papa reject the option that the ninth and final takana had to do with this Lashin Shal Zuris? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Because in the days of Rebbe and Zakkai, historically, there was no more Lashin Shal Zuris. How do we know? I'll tell you, concentration between Rebbe and Zakkai. Rebbe and Zakkai did it for 120 years. The first 40 years, he was busy Osak B'Pragmatia. He was doing business. Then he learned for 40 years. And then for the final 40 years of his life, he taught. And we know that 40 years before Churban Abayis, there was no more Lashon Shal Zahiris. It was always read. Utnan, and it says, Mishachor Abayis is going to be Ben Zakkai. So it seems that the Takanos were after the Churban. Now, if his takana is in the final 40 years of his life, which is after the Churban, then there was no more Lashon Shal Zahuris. Historically, it doesn't add up. And it couldn't be that was his final takana. Says the Gemara, maybe he said no, maybe he actually made the takana much earlier on in his life when he was a Talmud sitting in front of his Rebbe, and his Rebbe heard what his suggestion, and it became adopted, but it wasn't actually done sort of at the later stage of his life. Fine, that's the end of the Amud. Let us now turn our attention to this fascinating piece of Gemara. What did the Gemara say? The Gemara said that the final stage of Golus is Teveriya. Umishom asidin ligonen. That's the Gemara. Remember the following. We're going to build up a fascinating picture. The Gemara said that Isna'ari may offer kumi. Golus has to be. It's when there is no more hope. It's when it's like the most terrible thing. The way the Maharsham and others talk about it is when you plant a seed, say in the earth. What happens first? It first has to rot. Now we may offer. What happens when you have the Geula is spoken about as an organic root. It should grow. So what happens is first, what is inside has to rot, and only then can life begin. In other words, Teveriya represents the lowest point. Umishom asidin ligoy, and from there the Geula will come up. Let's look at the Rambam. The Rambam, page 2. Says the Rambam, Sanhedrin Perek Yudalet Halacha Yud Beis. B'tchila kushenivne Beis Hamikdash shoy Beis Nagol Yeshua B'lishkas Hagozes shoy Sof Ezras Yisrael v'hamokim shoy Yeshua B'y Chayil Haya she'en Yeshiva B'Azor L'Malchim Beis David. This is where the Sanhedrin sat. When things went wrong, they went from place to place to 10 places. It was so fun in Teveriya. And finally they ended up in Teveriya. Umishom le'omad based in Godel ad Ato. And from then on, there has never been a based in Godel. Says the Rambam. The Kabbalah, we have a tradition. Teveriya asidin lachzor tchila, that the Sanhedrin will return back to Teveriya when Moshiach comes. Umishom ne'etokim l'mikdash, and from there they will go to the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the first thing that we see is that Teveriya is therefore significant. It's not just, in other words, if the lowest point becomes, it's a bit like, just at a simple level, you know, there is a chazal that Moshiach is born on Tisha B'Av. It's the same concept. What does that mean? Something like Quinn explains. It means Tisha B'Av is the point where we lost hope. It was terrible. And what happens when you lose hope? Chatzois, when they, at the moment in time when they're actually beginning to set fire to the Beis Hamikdash. Then we get up and we put the parachas back on, and the lights go back on, and we can sit at the worst point, because the process is, the sequence is that it has to be reversed. So you come from that spot. Therefore, the Sanhedrin will come. We'll go back to Teveriya and then come to Yerushalayim. And as we shall see, there are opinions that Moshiach himself will be revealed in Teveriya. It's all going to kick off in Teveriya, northern part of Eretz Yisrael. The Chidah on its commentary on the Zohar mentions this. We're going to see some more absolutely amazing stuff. But we need to join up the dots. We need to understand why Teveriya? What is Teveriya? It's not random. These things are not random, obviously. We need to understand what Teveriya represents, what happened in Teveriya, and why that will be the key to reversing the whole thing. So the first thing, very good, we're going to get to that. That's part of it. That's part of it. But yeah, you see. So the first point I want to make over here is a medrash. A medrash here in Bereshis. Very interesting. Page 3. The medrash is on a pasuk that we said it this morning. We said in the base of Tilim and Tes. We say Kirbam Bateimoi La'olam Bateimoi La'olam Karu B'Shmoisom Alei Adomois. Karu B'Shmoisom Alei Adomois. The names, the Rishonim call their houses, their names on the earth. But really, that's stupid. Zedar Konkester Lomesh. The Gemara says that's foolish. What does it mean? Says the Medrash.
Yeah, they made it.
Masvurin Horoshoyim. Look where I put the arrow. Masvurin Horoshoyim. They think, the Rishonim think that their place where they were, that is their legacy and their eternity. So what did they do? They called places after themselves. For example, Teveriya, Al-Shem, Tiberius. So there was somebody called, I think it was a Roman, called Tiberius. Alexandria, Al-Shem, Alexandrus. Antiochia, Al-Shem, Antiochus. But really, they don't last. So the concept of the name Teveriya, at one level at least, is the belief of the Rishoyim, of the Gentiles, that the physical place this is it. And then, of course, we're going to see Chazal, we're going to say about Teveriya something totally different. Page 4, Gemara Megillah, Daf Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, the Gemara says, I've underlined it. First line line. Rakas Zu Teveriya. The Gemara gives 3 reasons why Teveriya is called Rakas. Either because even Rekon and Shabbat, Malay and Mitzvahs, even the people that are simple people, they're full of Mitzvahs. Go down another 2 lines. Teveriya, Shetoiva Re'iyasa. Tav Re'i. Teveriya is Tav Re'i. Good sight. Ayin Toiva. Yes? And there's another reason is because it is the Tibura Shel Eretz Yisrael. It's the belly button, it's the stomach, it's the midpoint in Eretz Yisrael. What's going on? What's going on? So, what's going on? Says, let's go to some of the sources. First source I have over here is the Binyah Yoda. There are 2 different commentaries from the Ben Ishai, from the Binyah Yodos, page 5. The first one is earlier on in Rosh Hashana, where he says, look what I've said in the arrow. He said, remember Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua argue whether B'Tishri Asid and Legoel or B'Nisan Asid and Legoel, Loi Ayri B'Bias Moshiach ben David. They, the Binyah says, a Kiddush. When they argue about whether Tishri or Nisan will be the beginning of the Geula, they weren't talking about Moshiach ben David, Elo B'Kibbutz Golios. What it means is that all the Jews will come back together again. First Moshiach comes, and then Klal Yisrael gets together. And then the Sundays Lekabit's going to be excited. Okay? The Hochi Mashma Mikra. The Maisa Bahoy you talk about Sheba God who Bo Hoy the Beretz Ashur. First will be the Shofar Gadol, and then all the lost Jews from all over the world will come together. So Moshiach comes first. And it's similar. And he goes on to say, he brings our Gemara as a proof text. Why? Because it says it's very the Kachkos of a Rambam. The Im Kain Melech HaMoshiach Yizgale Tchilo B'Mokoim Yodua B'Teveriya. Says the Ben Ish Chai that Moshiach then will appear first in Teveriya. And then the Malchus of Moshiach Ben David will spread. The Goder Hagzerus Yochul Ala Yom Sheyizgale B'Teveriya and the Machloikas. They're arguing, their machlokas is, when will the kibbutz golios happen? They're not arguing about when he personally will actually come. They're not talking about that. They're talking about when everybody gets together. What you see from this Ben Ish Chai, and we're just getting started, is he understands in the Rambam, others also seem to understand in the Rambam, the Radvaz writes this on the Rambam as well, that Moshiach will reveal himself first in Teveriya. Fascinating. Let's go to the next page, page 6. The Ben Yehoyada, the Ben Ish Chai quotes another sefer, the Emes Liyaakov. Look on what it says here. Kosav ta'am nochoi madua yizgale ha-Moshiach tchila be'eretz HaKadosh Teveriya. This is slightly different to the rest of what I want to tell you, but it's just such a beautiful word. Who's buried in Teveriya? Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is buried in Teveriya. I've been to his cave in Teveriya. Rabbi Meir Balanes. Rabbi Meir, he's buried in Teveriya. You go to his cave in Teveriya. I've been to his cave in Teveriya. Shahagula Tihya al Pismoras Rabbi Meir. There's a machlokas Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda and the Gemara in Kiddushin, whether if we don't behave ourselves as bonim, as children, whether Hashem will still treat us as children. As a machlokas Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. And we look at this, even, this is a joke so much more about this is why he doesn't bring it. Even when we don't do what Hashem wants us, we are still considered children. And therefore tzedakah will help. To have a moshel and melech shekaras al benoi, a moshel for a king who gets angry with his son, and if you do tzedakah, Hashem will treat you as a child even though you don't deserve it. And they said that's the reason that the Minigud Klal Yisrael to put tzedakah and Shem Reb Meir Balanes. Therefore, Moshiach will come b'schus hatzedakah. Therefore, Moshiach who comes b'schus hatzedakah, even though we may not deserve it. Where will he come from? He'll come from the place where Rabbi Meir lived. Rabbi Meir is the one who says that Moshiach will come even if we don't deserve it. Therefore, it makes sense. Moshiach should come from his place. He's going to be Teveriya, do Asrei Demar. Rabbi Yehuda argues. Okay, let's leave that. So that's one interesting insight why Moshiach comes into Teveriya. But I think we have to dig a little bit deeper here. So go on to the next page. This is a quote from the Sifsei Chachamim. It's a Perush in Megillah, page 7. Look what I've highlighted here. Teveriya. Zu Teveriya. What it says here, Zu Teveriya, page 7. The Lomalik Roshmot Teveriya. Chamas al Shem Chamei Teveriya. So the Sifsei Chachamim says, out of the love of Eretz Yisrael, I'm going to quote to you from a sefer, Sha'arei Yerushalayim. Sefer Sha'arei Yerushalayim, Sha'arei. Teveriya, he says, is the two words that are put together, as the Gemara says, Tav Raya, good sight. It's a small city. It is actually describing, the Sefer Shari Yerushalayim is describing Teveriya a bit. We're less interested in that. Let's go on. Right, here is the Noisar. Go down. There's Rashi and Mukha. It's Rashi says it's the deepest place in Eretz Yisrael, whatever that means. I'll show you. The Bikar, Kabbalah Machashes. Listen to this. Look what I've underlined here. V'Rabbeinu HaKadosh Chiber Shom HaMishnah. Mishnayos were written in Teveriya. Rabbi Yochanan Chovar Shom HaTalmud Yerushalmi. Rabbi Yochanan is the one over here who says Mishom Asidim Ligoel. Says this Sefer Sifsei Chachamim, quoting the Sefer Shari Yerushalayim. Mishnah was written, well, it wasn't written, it was redacted, it was compiled by Rabbeinu Rabbi Yehuda Anossi, where? In Teveriya. So Teveriya and the Talmud Yerushalmi was written in Teveriya. So Mishnah and Talmud Yerushalmi were written in Teveriya. What are you beginning to sense? What is the theme here? Rabbi Akiva is another theme. We'll come back to your theme. We're beginning to see a theme of Torah Shabbat Peh. Yes? Let's go further. Page 8. Now this is, I think it's really, really interesting. This is a letter from Dinah Bramsky, which was written, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was written to the Tzitz Eliezer. This is brought in Hakdama, an introduction to one of the Halachim of the Tzitz Eliezer. Look where I put the arrow. The discussion here was there was a political debate about, not political, sorry, it was a halachic debate about bones that are found in Eretz Yisrael. And this debate still rages. When you find bones in Eretz Yisrael, make a cheshbon. There were those who said, how many millions of people over the years have lived there? Many of them were goyim. How do you know if the bones are Jewish or not? And to treat them, how's the sock? And this was a big, hot topic. It still is to some extent with archaeology and all sort of stuff. Sometimes they're simonim and sometimes there aren't. Yeah, sometimes there are. So what? Yeah, but there were those who wanted to claim that you don't need to look at a bones and say, oh, sopek, maybe it's Jewish. There were those who wanted to say it probably statistically might be more likely to be not Jewish. On that time, Abramsky wrote a song. Look what he wrote. This will blow you away. He's talking about bones in Eretz Yisrael. He says, but now let's talk about Teveriya, which it seems was the story that Dinah Bramsky is referring to. And in order to make your life easier, he says, so that you shouldn't have to look around in the Svarim, I point out to you to look in the Sefer Kafta Vaperach and Perach Zayin. HaSefer Hazeh, this is a Hashana Sefer. It's mentioned by the Ramah in Yerudesh in Lamed and by the Radbaz, and he lived in the 57th year of the 6,000. To work out when it, but certainly if the Ramah is quoting him, you're going back to the 1500s earlier. Shom Kosa B'Loshen Hazeh. V'chein b'Teveriya yeshenim. They are sleeping. It's a nice way of talking about people who are buried. In Teveriya yeshenim kohol godol min hatzadikim v'hachasidim v'geirei hatzedek. In Teveriya there is a massive Dikehilla of tzadikim, many tzadikim buried there, including Rabbi Akiva, the Arba Esrei Elef Talmidim, the 24,000 Talmidim. Where were they buried? Where were they buried? They were buried in Teveriya. Gam Yodua Mama Chachomim b'Megillah, Rekes Teveriya, V'Lam Nishim Resh Afiru Kamshur B'Lei Bitzois. And therefore, you've got Rabbi Meir, you've got Rabbi Akiva and his 24,000 Talmidim buried there. What happened there? The Gemara says in Yomos that he had 24,000 Talmidim. We know Rabbi Akiva is the Yesod of Torah Shabbat Peh. He composes the Mishnayos. He redacts the Mishnayos in Teveriya. Talmud Yerushalmi is in Teveriya. Another very low point in our history takes place in Teveriya. The 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva died, says the Gemara, the world was desolate. It's another Churban. Rabbi Akiva managed to restart with 5 Talmidim, but where are they all buried? In that Ophor, Hisnari, May Ophor Kumi, there is another 24,000 who were meant to be the continuation of Torah Shabbat Peh. And this is the last place the Sanhedrin goes to. This is the lowest point. And we manage, if we're going to reverse that, we reverse it through Torah Shabbat Peh. And therefore it comes from Teveriya. Teveriya represents, on the one hand, it represents the lowest point, but it also tells us. I want to point you to a Gemara, the next a Gemara here, which on page 9, which I highlighted. Reb Ami and Reb Asi says the Gemara Afal Gav Hamaluk Sleisa Beit Krishna Teveriya. Even though there were 13 Botei Kinesios, there were 13 shuls in Teveriya. They refused to daven in any of the shuls. They davened where they learned. To daven to Hashem is not in a shul, it's in a Beis HaMedrash, and it's from here we learn. And according to some Rishonim, who shot in this Gemara, by the way, this is true even b'yechidus, even if there isn't a million, according to some. What do you see from here? HaKadosh Baruch Hu's connection to us, the bris that he has with us. Says the Gemara in Gittin Ella al Torah Shabbat Peh. A bris is an exclusive connection which can't be broken. What is on what basis? Torah Shabbat Peh. Torah Shabbat Peh flowers and it grows in the darkest of places. In Bovel, even more than in Eretz Yisrael. In Bovel, when things look terrible. That's when we managed to keep that alive. The Sanhedrin stopped there. Rabbi Akiva was mechaber the Mishnah there. Why was the Mishnah? The Mishnah is because it's not really meant to be written down. It means that this is an emergency situation. It's not a good situation that we've got it written down. Where does that happen? That happens in Teveriya. Rabbi Yochanan is mechaber Talmud Yerushalmi there. Rabbi Akiva and all his Talmidim are buried there. And therefore says the Rambam, Moshiach, and the Sanhedrin will start again. They will come from there. The connection between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 13, I think, by the way, is not coincidental. 13 is Gematria Echad, Gematria Ahava. It's the way we connect. We connect to the Rebbeinu Shalom through the Yud Gimel Midrash Shakir, the Dreshes Behem, and the Yud Gimel and the Imamin, and Hashem responds with the Yud Gimel Midas Arachim. Connection to Chanukah, I think, is also there's some interesting connections. The 13 Chashmonoim, you know that? Rashi says Sabracha. So 13 Chashmonoim. It's half of Yud Gimel. Two parts that go together. There's much more. The Mishnah says in Midas that the Yevonim breached 13 holes in the Soirig. The Soirig was the wall that said that the point beyond which a Gentile wasn't allowed to pass. 13 breaches. What's the big deal? The wall was this high, by the way, because it was showing you, they were saying symbolically, you have no special, unique relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. And when we came back and we said, yes, we have Kedusha. We have the Torah Shabbat Peh is the symbol of our relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Shimon HaTzadik, Sherif Nesagdol, it's all at the same time. 13 Chashmonoim, Bris Milah, by the way, Shabbos Chodesh and Milah, we don't have time to go into it, they're all multiples of 13, think about it. Lots of different things. And that is from there, the Gula will come. So us, in Golos, in COVID, in winter, sitting and learning Torah Shabbat Peh, Misham, from there the Gula comes about. Okay.
According to this Rav, does it mean actually the place, the Teveriya place, or does it mean is the ideal?
No, Teveriya. According to the Rambam says Teveriya. So the Rambam says Teveriya.
Place, Taka.
That's what it says.
Thank you.
Beseda, more Maramukamus, but that's the basic idea. Shkayach, nice to see you. Be well. Good night. Bye.